Okay. On November 3rd, 2014, I wrote about my identity in a Bonner write-up. The last line read, "I don't want to hide my identity anymore. I want to be completely open and honest about who I am." So here goes. I grew up the daughter of an Argentine immigrant and an American-born Canadian. My family often didn't have health insurance. My parents worked in different jobs until they ultimately ended up working for themselves. I look exactly like my mother, white and American. My school was over 50% Hispanic. People were often confused about why I looked the way I do, had the name I have, Camila Gonzalez, spoke Spanish, and identified a Dominican boy who lived with my family off and on as my older brother. This life made me self-conscious, like people were always wondering about me. But looking back now, I benefited from it. I found that I had a different perspective because of the way I looked. People treated me one way when they couldn't see me and only heard my name, and a completely different way when I was standing right in front of them. I learned about discrimination early on because of that. But another thing that it did was make it easy for me to shield my background. I wrote 2 years ago that I didn't want to do that anymore, but it's something I work on every day. In high school, I did a lot of volunteering, and eventually I went back to the health clinic that gave my family the ability to see doctors regularly, and I interned there. It was there that I fell in love with public health and serving low-income communities. Bonner stuck out to me when I was looking at colleges. I wanted to be able to actually know the community where I went to school, and I really wanted to work in a clinic. When I came across Crossover, I was so happy. This was a place that I could understand. I knew what it was like to be a patient and intern behind the scenes at a place like Crossover, but I had never been the first person someone saw and spoke to when they walked in. And I have to say, it changed me. As much as I appreciated the clinic that I grew up going to, I often felt uncomfortable. I was always aware that the person at the front desk looked confused when I walked in because I was white. I noticed people looking at me in the waiting room. I was what didn't fit, and it made me feel really strange and bad about myself. Part of this is what excited me about doing my service at Crossover. I was hoping to understand what it's like to be the person at the front who spoke to people and didn't know their story. When I began my service at Crossover, I felt like I was home again. These were the kinds of people that I grew up around, the people that I understood. Honestly, sometimes I felt like that was where I could breathe. I would be on campus hiding behind my whiteness, and then I would go to the clinic and I would feel safe. It was scary for me to be at school acting like I understood other people's lives when really I had called my brother the first week of school to tell him I had never seen so many white people in one place in my life. I remember being embarrassed at my house when my friends from school came to visit, and I remember hoping that they wouldn't notice that my family only had one car. Stupid things. But then I could go back to my safe place, the clinic, until it wasn't anymore. The more time I spent at the clinic talking to patients, translating for doctors, alarming people when they came up to the front window and tried to speak broken English, expecting I wouldn't know Spanish, I realized that I didn't belong there either. I was on the other side of the glass. I have struggled with this so much, not knowing what my identity is, but knowing the way people identify me is not the way I identify myself. So, the summer after my freshman year, I decided to disrupt myself a little bit more and do my Bonner summer service in Zambia. I spent 2 months living with a Zambian family, working at an orphanage for babies with HIV, and feeling completely out of my comfort zone. I cried the first few days I was there and then proceeded to count down the days until I could go home. But in the meantime, I fell in love with serving these people who were so different from me. I saw things there that I'd only ever read about in the news or in classes, and suddenly I had a brand new perspective on the world. My host family took me in and showed me how people from completely different worlds can love each other. We watched the World Cup together, and we cheered on Argentina without them ever questioning or second-guessing me. My host mom got me to try caterpillar for dinner, a Zambian delicacy, and my host sisters would curl up in my lap and lounge while we talked. I shared not only a room, but a bed with more than one stranger who was passing through my homestay parents' house. I traveled through Zambia with people I didn't know, and I bonded with the orphanage workers who had ideas about taking care of babies that were far from normal for me. I had to learn to not freak out every time a caregiver lifted a baby up by their arm or gave them scorching hot milk. I had to find a way to change things that I knew were not good without acting like an imposing American. I had to learn patience and acceptance in a way that I never had before. I had to learn to trust my host mother when she told me that the reason I could not get out of bed was because I had malaria, and that no, I was not going to die from it. Instead, I took some medicine, and because I also had something else, I got a quick shot in the butt, and by quick, I mean extremely painful. The day before I left Zambia to go back home, my host mother told me that the girl who came to her house was not the same girl who was leaving, and that she was proud of how brave I had become. And then I realized that it was in Zambia that I began to understand that you don't have to be like the people around you in order to belong to them. When I came back to Richmond for my sophomore year, I carried with me a new understanding of the world and my place in it. I started to worry less about the differences between me and other people and to focus instead on the similarities. I realized that the pure happiness I had seen in Zambia was proof that no one is less than anyone else as long as they continue to be happy. So I carried myself differently, not only at Crossover, but also on this campus. I found that just because I came from something different didn't mean that I was not as good. and I took with me what I learned in Zambia to crossover. I came back understanding that I did belong to the people at crossover, even though I was on the other side of the glass. I found a new kind of acceptance there. I've become good friends with the employees, and patients recognize me when they come in. Crossover has become part of my life in a way that is different than what I expected, but is better than what I could have imagined. Recently, I've gotten close with a staff member who started at the clinic a few months ago. About 3 weeks ago, I came in and she ran up to me and said, "Cami, I didn't know your last name was Gonzalez. Oh my goodness, that's amazing." You know, every time she's around when I'm speaking to a patient in Spanish, she says to the patient, "You think she's white, don't you? She's not. Isn't that incredible?" And that, for me, was when it all came full circle. It took a while, and it's something that I'm still working out, but it was through Bonner that I finally began to understand who I truly am. There's a reason that I've had this struggle with my identity, and I think because both my background and my present are so useful to me, my identity has changed. I am not just one thing. I'm a person who has struggled with being part of two worlds. At Crossover, those worlds intersect and give me the opportunity to understand people in different ways. I notice the people who come in and clearly feel uncomfortable. I try my best to recognize that and show them they're welcome no matter what their story is. I know what it's like to feel out of place. The people who timidly walk up to the window because they are worried that they will have to struggle to speak English with me, I try to make it immediately clear that I can speak Spanish with them, but that I'm not assuming they can't speak English. Because I grew up with a father who had a strong accent, and people often went right into Spanish when talking to him, but he often found that offensive. So how has Bonner affected me? Well, I've seen that my experiences make up who I am, and that identity is whatever I want it to be. I think it's okay to not want to tell everyone about my background as long as I'm honest about who it is that I am now. I'll be leaving here soon, and I'm still in the process of figuring out what it is I'll be doing afterwards. One thing I know is that for me, the only job worth doing is one in which who I am today will help me connect and learn from people. I want to work with people. I want to work with low-income populations. I want to try to at least make small differences in people's lives. Bonner has given me the confidence to go out into the world and show my face as it truly is, because I know that my experiences can help me help others. So to end, I'd like to leave you with my favorite quote, which I have seen as true throughout my time as Bonner. There's really no such thing as the voiceless. There are only the deliberately silenced or the preferably unheard.